U.S. Department of Agriculture isn't waiting for the International Monetary Fund or for a congressional aid package to help Ukraine. Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack says the United States is looking to import hemp seed from the embattled country, and they're figuring out industrial applications for the plant. Bloomberg's Alan Birga joins me now from Washington with more on that story. Alan, what does this move say about efforts to build Ukraine's economy?
Well, what this says is that the U.S. is going to be in this for the long haul. And, you know, look, when people are signing agreements from the IMF or the U.S. Congress is passing a law, they're not going to be talking about something like hemp seed. And yet, Ukraine is the world's fourth largest producer of hemp seed. And if you're going to build those business relationships, you've got to get on the ground and really get into the details. And that's what the USDA is doing right now. This is something you're not going to see in the headlines, but it's how the business gets done, and it's how a relationship is built with a country like Ukraine as it's trying to build its own economy.
Alan, where do things stand in terms of building ties, and how does this become a long-term effort?
Well, this is very much looking at the long haul, because it's really looking at what does Ukraine really have to offer the international community. In the case of hemp seed, you have a product that's attractive in the U.S. because it doesn't run afoul of U.S. laws. You also have agricultural exchanges going on between the countries because Ukraine is an agricultural powerhouse. This is something where they have a position of strength. The U.S. and the EU are trying to exploit Ukraine's strengths and use those strengths to build better relationships, help get their own economy on their feet, and then you don't deal with pressure from Russia as they look in their own oil and gas sector.
Well, where do we stand then? Where does Ukraine stand in terms of agricultural production? How does Russia stand to benefit from controlling Crimea?
Well, this is a centuries-old story. I mean, Russia's responsible for about 90 million tons of grain per year. Ukraine produces about 50 million, which just shows you what that one region did back in the days of the former Soviet Union. Russia's agriculture minister says that essentially Crimea will be responsible for about 2 million tons of grain this year. That's production that used to be falling under the Ukraine heading, of course, because of the disputed territory. Many would say it still does. But Russia has control of that region now, and that's just one of those subtle power shifts that you see when one country takes over the territory of another.
But, Alan, what about disruptions then, and how about the markets? How are they reacting to this turmoil?
Well, that's been something that's been watched closely for the last several weeks. Obviously, Ukrainian ports are a big terminal for both Russian and Ukrainian products, actually. That doesn't seem to be so much of a problem so far. Right now, the markets are watching the spring planting. Looks like the dry Ukraine is getting a little bit of rain. And it's nice that the headlines coming out of Ukraine in terms of agriculture are fairly normal right now. People are keeping their fingers crossed on that.
Bloomberg's Alan Birga joining us from Washington. Alan, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Coming up when Bottom Line